was a crisp autumn afternoon when Sophia boarded the crowded city bus. The faint chill in the air hinted at the fast approaching winter. She wrapped her arms around her growing belly, offering a small smile to strangers who glanced her way. At 8 months pregnant, every step felt like a task. But she was used to the city's hustle and bustle. Sophia knew how to navigate it, even with a child on the way. He scanned the bus, hoping to find a seat. It was packed as usual, with a mix of office workers, students, and shoppers returning home. Near the front sat a man in his mid-40s, dressed in a neatly pressed suit. His features were sharp, and his demeanor suggested a sense of entitlement. He sat in the priority seating section, which was marked for the elderly, disabled, or pregnant passengers. Sophia approached him politely. "Excuse me, sir," she began softly, her voice tinged with fatigue. "Would you mind letting me sit here? It's a bit difficult for me to stand." The man looked up briefly, his blue eyes narrowing in irritation. Without even a word, he turned back to his phone, pretending not to hear her. The subtle murmur of other passengers quieted slightly as a few nearby people noticed the exchange. Sophia hesitated, unsure whether to ask again or simply move on. "Sir," she repeated, this time more firmly, "this seat is for people who need it. I'm pregnant, and I'd appreciate it if you'd let me sit down." He sighed audibly, finally looking up from his screen. "Why should I?" he retorted, his tone icy. "I got here first. Maybe you should plan your day better if standing is such a problem for you." A few passengers gasped softly, their discomfort palpable. Sophia felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't one to shy away from standing up for herself, but the exhaustion of the day was weighing on her. "It's not about who got here first," she replied, her voice steady. "It's about common decency." "Common decency," the man scoffed, his voice rising. "Look, lady, I'm not giving up my seat just because you decided to have a baby. That's your problem, not mine." Sophia bit her lip, feeling a mix of frustration and embarrassment. She glanced around the bus, hoping someone else might intervene, but most people averted their gazes. A few younger passengers stood up, offering her their seats, but she shook her head. It wasn't about finding another spot, it was about principle. What the man didn't know, however, was that someone else on the bus had been quietly observing the entire interaction. Sitting a few rows behind was Officer Marcus Bennett, Sophia's husband. Off duty and dressed casually, Marcus had boarded the bus a few stops earlier, planning to surprise his wife and accompany her home. He had been watching her from afar, a proud smile on his face, until the confrontation began. Marcus's expression darkened as he witnessed the man's dismissive attitude. He knew Sophia well enough to recognize her determination, but he also saw how tired she was. He decided to let the situation play out for a moment, curious to see if anyone else would step in. When no one did, he stood up. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice calm but commanding. The man in the suit turned to see the tall, broad-shouldered black man approaching him. Marcus's presence was immediately intimidating. Not because he was threatening, but because he carried himself with quiet authority. "What now?" the man muttered, clearly irritated. "That's my wife you're speaking to," Marcus said evenly. "And I think you owe her an apology." The man blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Your wife," he repeated, glancing between Marcus and Sophia. "So what? She doesn't own the seat." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "No, she doesn't. But she's 8 months pregnant and asked you politely to do the decent thing. You chose to be rude instead. And who are you to lecture me about decency?" The man shot back, his voice rising. "This isn't your business." Marcus smiled faintly, though there was no humor in it. "Actually, it is my business. Not just because she's my wife, but because I'm a police officer. And right now, you're violating basic transit rules about priority seating." His man's face flushed. "You're kidding," he said, his bravado faltering slightly. "Do I look like I'm kidding?" Marcus asked, his tone cool. He pulled out his badge, holding it up just long enough for the man to see it. "You've got two choices. You can apologize to my wife and give up the seat, or we can have a longer conversation outside this bus. Your call." The tension on the bus was palpable. Passengers who had been pretending not to notice were now watching intently, some even murmuring in approval. The man in the suit shifted uncomfortably, clearly weighing his options. Finally, with a begrudging sigh, he stood up. "Fine," he muttered. avoiding eye contact with Sophia as he moved aside. "Thank you," Sophia said simply, her tone measured but firm as she took the seat. Marcus remained standing, keeping his gaze on the man for a moment longer. Then he turned back to Sophia, his expression softening. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, a small smile breaking through her frustration. "I am now. Thank you." Marcus leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead before taking a seat nearby. The bus resumed its journey, the hum of the engine filling the silence as passengers slowly returned to their own thoughts. But for Sophia and Marcus, the moment lingered. It wasn't just about the seat or the rude man. It was a reminder of the strength they found in each other and of the quiet battles they sometimes had to fight to demand respect and dignity in a world that didn't always offer it freely. As the bus pulled into their stop, Marcus helped Sophia to her feet. Together, they stepped off, leaving the man in the suit behind. And though he remained silent, the weight of the encounter seemed to hang over him. Perhaps, Sophia thought, it was a lesson he needed to learn. For her and Marcus, the day continued as it always did, hand in hand, facing the world together, one step at a time. Sophia and Marcus walked slowly through their neighborhood, the familiar sights and sounds offering some comfort after the ordeal on the bus. The streetlights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the sidewalk as the sun dipped below the horizon. Marcus carried Sophia's bag, his free hand resting protectively on her lower back. "You didn't have to do that," Sophia said, breaking the silence. Her voice was gentle but tinged with concern. "I could have handled him." "I know you could have," Marcus replied, glancing at her with a small smile. "But you shouldn't have to." Sophia sighed, leaning slightly against him as they walked. "It's just exhausting, you know? The stares, the judgments. I wasn't asking for special treatment, just basic decency." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Some people can't see beyond their own entitlement, but you stood your ground, and I'm proud of you for that." As they approached their apartment building, Marcus held the door open for her, his protective instincts kicking in as always inside. The cozy space they called home greeted them with its familiar warmth. The scent of lavender from a nearby diffuser filled the air, and their dog, a cheerful golden retriever named Max, bounded over to greet them. Sophia bent down to pet Max, who wagged his tail enthusiastically, seemingly oblivious to the troubles of the world. Marcus watched her, a surge of love and admiration filling his chest. Later that evening, as they sat on the couch with cups of tea, the encounter on the bus lingered in their minds. Sophia rested her head against Marcus's shoulder, her hands cradling her belly. "Do you think he'll change?" she asked quietly. Marcus hesitated, his fingers gently brushing through her hair. "I don't know," he admitted, "but maybe we planted a seed. Sometimes it takes being called out to make someone reflect on their behavior." Sophia nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. "I just hope our child grows up in a world where things like that happen less often." "They will," Marcus said firmly, "because we'll teach them to be better, to stand up for themselves and others, and to never let ignorance or hate define them." The next morning, life moved on as it always did. Marcus was back in his uniform, ready for another day on the job, while Sophia prepared for a doctor's appointment. But the story of what had happened on the bus began to spread in ways they hadn't anticipated. A young woman who had witnessed the incident had taken a video and posted it online. By the time Marcus checked his phone during a lunch break, the video had already gone viral. Comments poured in, with people praising Sophia's resilience and Marcus's calm yet firm handling of the situation. "Babe, have you seen this?" He had applications. Marcus texted Sophia, attaching the video link. Sophia's phone buzzed as she waited in the doctor's office. She watched the video, her heart racing. It felt strange to see such a personal moment displayed for the world to see. When Marcus returned home that evening, Sophia was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through the comments. "People are so supportive," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and relief. Resources, more for some of their peers and colleagues, none of their friends and family put in support and training. Marcus sat down across from her, placing his hand over hers. "People recognize strength when they see it. You didn't back down, and that resonated with them." Over the next few days, messages began pouring in. Strangers reached out to share their own experiences of facing discrimination and standing up for what was right. Sophia and Marcus realized that their story had sparked a conversation, one that was long overdue, but not all the responses were positive. There were, as always, those who defended the man's actions or criticized Marcus for intervening. Keyboard warriors, Marcus muttered one evening, scrolling past a particularly nasty comment. They wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real conversation about this. Sophia placed a hand on his arm. Let them talk, she said. We know the truth, and so do the people who matter. As the weeks went by, the attention from the video began to fade, replaced by the next viral moment. But for Sophia and Marcus, the impact remained. They were reminded of the strength they had as a team, the importance of standing up for what was right, and the power of small moments to create ripples of change. When their baby was born a month later, the joy of holding their child overshadowed any lingering frustrations from the past. Marcus looked down at the tiny, wriggling bundle in his arms and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Our little warrior, he whispered, smiling at Sophia. Sophia laughed softly, tears of happiness in her eyes. With you as their dad, they'll be unstoppable. Marcus kissed her forehead, his heart full. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, as a family.